Okay. We are up to Zayin Amud Aleph. We're coming back to the idea of Rosh Hashana. Remember, nowhere in the Torah does it actually say that Rosh Hashana and Tishrei is Judgment Day. And we learned that out. It says, Mereshis Hashana ad Achris Hashana. And the Abish should judge the beginning of the year, what's going to happen at the end of the year, but we don't know when. Until we had this pasuk in Tehillim with David and Melech many years later, Tiku b'chodesh sheifa b'kesler chagenu, and we said Ezer Chag shachodesh meschasabay, which Yom Tov is it that starts in the beginning of the month, which is Rosh Hashanah, and then it says Ki choykli Yisrael hu mishpel kei Yaakov, and that's Judgment Day. That's how we know. So this Mishnah comes along and tells us there are actually 4 Judgment Days. This is the Mishnah. Ba'ba prokim ha'olam nidin. On 4 occasions the world gets judged. The Pesach ala Tfur, and Pesach it gets judged on the Tfur, how the grains will produce. Ba'atzeres on Shavuos, al Peidas Ilan, the fruits of the tree. The Rosh Hashana, on Rosh Hashanah, Kol Baya Olam Even Lefonav K'vnei Moran. On Rosh Hashanah, everybody passes by the Eibishter, like Bnei Moran. The Gemara later on, not today, but in the next few days, we'll have 3 different opinions of what Bnei Moran means. Like sheep in a single aisle, we'll see. Shneimar, it says, Hayotzed Yachad Libam, that the Eibishter created the hearts together. Hamevin Kol Masem, he understands all their activities. Uvechag Nedenel Mayim, Sukkos were judged on the water. And why is these 4 different, days of Rosh Hashanah? How do we know that's the case? So we'll see in the bottom of the page where the Ran learns that the activities we do on these different Tevim, like this Chamayim and Sukkos, indicates to us that is the Rosh Hashanah for it. And usually these things are right before the season of when this is going to happen. So the Shem already asks, what's Rosh Hashanah and Tishrei about? You'll be judged if you do well, but you're not going to do well as if you have a good produce in your farm. That's not going to happen until, Shavuos or Pesach. So they answer that the Rosh Hashanah is, I guess, for the on Pesach and Shavuos, that's for the world. Is it going to be bountiful, the crop? Is it going to be scarce, rain, not rain, all that kind of stuff for the world at large? And then Rosh Hashanah, it relates to each individual. So how is your farm going to do? How are you personally going to do? So it's 2 different kinds of Rosh Hashanah. And very interesting, the Ran says over here, he talks about why we say Slichas. He says, if you believe that the world was, why Rosh Hashanah is Tishrei? He said, if you follow the world was created on Rosh Hashanah, and he believes, according to one opinion, that's the halacha. And even though we learned before, when it comes to seasons, we follow Rabbi Lezer. That's not because that's the halacha; it's because it's easier to use the calendar that way. But if you learn the world was created on Tishrei, it makes sense that Rosh Hashanah was the 6-day creation. 25th day was the first day. Rosh Hashanah was the 6-day creation of mankind. Adam sinned, and Hashem punished him, and then he let him out in the tshuva. So therefore, Rosh Hashanah was marked as that's the day that we should do tshuva because there was a precedent. Adam Adishon, he was judged on that day for what he did to Eitz Hadas. So from when he was told not to eat Eitz Hadas until he committed a sin, it took 1 hour on Friday, Erev Shabbos. So that's what Hashanah is then. He says, according to that, it makes sense, and he quotes a number of cities. He cites a number of cities where they used to start saying Slichas on the 25th day of El. That's when the world was created. And that then became Almen today, that, the Shabbos before, because at the beginning of the week, the world was created on Sunday. And a minimum of 4 days, because an animal, you have to supervise for 4 days, minimum 4 days before you can go ahead and bring it to the korban. But then he says, I believe the world was actually created, like Rabbi Shua, the halacha Rabbi Shua, the world was created in Nisan. And in fact, he holds there's no basis whatsoever to say slichas, and he says, therefore, many communities never said slichas. Because why would you say slichas any time before Rosh Hashanah? Why Rosh Hashanah is then is because the Eibishter on Yom Kippur gave Moshe Rabbeinu the second luchas, and he forgave the Yidden. So therefore, and probably didn't the last minute, probably took a few days before, so we'll say 10 days. So the beginning of the slicha was 10 days before. And that's why Rosh Hashanah is then. Eibishter gives opportunity, even though he's ready to judge us, but Beinanim, Eibishter suspends the judgment, or he waits, he delays it until Yom Kippur. That's why Rosh Hashanah is earmarked for the beginning of Tishrei. But then he says that, he doesn't say it's Friday, but he says those communities that start saying Slichas on the Rosh Chodesh El is for the same reason. The Moshe, when he went up the 3rd time already, he knew that the Eibishter was going to forgive him, because the 2nd time he was there, the second lot of 40 days, he cried in the spal. And then when he went up the 3rd time, and the Eibishter told him to bring the rocks, already the Mechila already started from Rosh Chodesh El. That's why they say Slichas from Rosh Chodesh El. Says the Gemara, these grains, what are we talking about? That the tfua that's right here before us, that's still growing. Kolhani harf, the Amos is all the events that occurred with the growing crop. You tell me that the judgment day for the crop is on, let's say, Pesach. So all that was already growing. When was that judged? Last year. It was already judged last year. So what are you doubting for now? It hasn't happened. It's too late already. It was already judged last year how this crop is going to do. Ela must be tvua the mizdara, must be the tvua that you're about to plant right now. Let's say later in the year. The member the chad dina mizdanya. So it comes out that every single thing that grows is only judged. The Gemara seems to be saying that the grains that grow, for example, they're judged once. So if it's already mid-growth, must have been judged the previous year, and if you didn't grow it, you didn't plant it yet, it'll be judged this year. Says the Gemara, you think things only have one judgment? The memra, let me ask you a question. Do you think the chadinim is dana that there's only one judgment, that's it forever? But Tanya, we learned if you have, let's say, tvua she'ira bakeri, let's say some kind of terrible thing happened to the anus or some kind of an accident. What happened before Pesach must have been already decided, determined. The previous year Pesach, the doinus l'sha'ava must have been already determined the previous Pesach. But if it happened la'achar Pesach, then it must have been a doinus l'haba. So we see clearly the same grains that, till Pesach was judged last Pesach, and from this Pesach onwards it's judged a new Pesach. In other words, the same grains can have two different judgments. Adam by a person, let's say Shira Keri, say tragedy happened, or an accident, Kayim Kippur, even for Yom Kippur, Nidul Shab. It was judged last year in Kippur, and La'achri Kippur Nidul Haba, be for the future Yom Kippur. We learned right before once, it's not so clear. The period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when is that judged? Is that judged this Rosh Hashanah or the previous Yom Kippur? Rashi and Babasa of Yud and other places. Omar says, Rabbi Shmaminos exclusively that Trey Dinam is done. It's quite possible that the same grain should go through two different judgment periods. If what happened last year, it was last year, and what's going to transpire this year is this year. The same grains as it continues to grow. Omar Abaye says, since every year there's a new judgment, so be smart, be clever. Therefore, if a person sees the Matzliach Zara Afel, if he sees that his late bloomers are actually growing very, very well, then in this year, so try to rush in before Pesach. It means this year you have a hatzlacha. So try to rush for those things that grow very quickly. Bring it forward, plant it earlier, like in Tevis. I mean the Adamoti Lemedina Kodin Solik. So before it gets to Nisan, before the angel looks at it again, and who knows what the new judgment will be, you can already harvest it, or almost harvest it. It's almost ready. So therefore, be smart. Now that we're telling that every year there's a new judgment, and if you see you must live this year, that means this is a good year. Invest as much as you can, do whatever you can, and take it out before Nisan, because you have no guarantees what's going to happen afterwards. It says the Gemara, Mani Mas Nisan. Who is the author of our mission that believes there are 4 different judgment days? Because we're going to bring 5 opinions. Initially 4, then a 5th. Our mission will be the 5th, like Rabbi Shmuel. Who's our mission? Loy Rabbi Yehuda, Loy Rabbi Yasi, but Loy Rabbi Nosson. All 4 of them, they hold different things. What's the story? Time to learn. Hakol them Rosh Hashanah says everyone gets judged on Rosh Hashanah, Gzar Din Shalehem, but when is the final conclusive psak? The sentence is Nechtem Kippur. It doesn't get sealed until Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur. Divrei Rameir. Rabbi Yehuda says, so therefore everything is judged on Rosh Hashanah. There's no such thing as Pesach, Sukkot, or Shavuos. Everything is judged on Rosh Hashanah, but it doesn't get sealed until Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yehuda he says everything is judged on Rosh Hashanah. But when is the final verdict? Kol echad ve'echad bizmane. That's when we say that differences. That the Pesach will be determined a lot for. That's when the verdict will be sealed for grains. Batzar Shavuos will be sealed for pay to seal and fruit of the tree. B'chag Sukkos will seal the Dain Olamayim. But a person is unique. That Nidim Rosh Hashanah. So everything else you get judged on Rosh Hashanah, but the final decision is not made until the appropriate time. But when it comes to a person, it is on Yom Kippur. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yasi says, not like Rameir said that everything gets sealed on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yasi says, no, Adam Nidan B'chol Yom, every day you get judged. In other words, the Chassidus explains, on Rosh Hashanah you get the general judgment, but what the Eibusher will give you, but then every day you get judged, do you deserve to get this particular allotment that you're supposed to get, or should it remain still in Ruchnis, or should it come down in Gashmis? So there is a place for Rosh Hashanah, But even though you were granted all these wonderful blessings, you have to earn it every single day. Now it says, but we check this out every morning. Nosson says, every morning, every hour, every moment. With that very same pasuk that you bring, but every morning, it says, seconds he checks you out. So who's our Mishnah? And our Mishnah says, it seems that 4 different seasons. It seems like everything is being done 4 different times. Judgment and the final verdict. No, maybe not. Maybe also Mishnah of Yehuda, and our Mishnah is not talking about the judgment. Our Mishnah is talking about when it's sealed. When our Mishnah is talking about Zadin on the sealing, when they finally seal it. And the problem will be people on Rosh Hashana, because our Mishnah says it happens on Rosh Hashana, but we just said it gets sealed in Kippur. Adam's a problem with Adam because of Yehuda says Adam gets sealed on Yom Kippur, and our Mishnah says on Rosh Hashana. So who's the author of our Mishnah? Amar Rabba. Hi, Tana, Rabbi Shmuel. You know what the author of our Mishnah is? It's Rabbi Shmuel. A 5th opinion altogether. The Tana, Rabbi Shmuel. And 4 times we'll get judged. For Pesach, it gets judged regarding the grains. At Tzedis, it gets judged. I'll pay the seal for the tree. The Chag, Sukkot, nid doing a judge in the water. A person gets judged in the Shana, that is why Nechtam Kippurim. The Tony Masdisen at Chilas Din. So Amish is talking about, how come by a person in mentioned Shana and Kippur? We're talking about when judgment starts. So all these 3 other occasions is the judgment and the verdict at the same time. Except the human, that by people, we get judged in the Shana and get sealed in Kippur, and Amish is talking about Chilas Din. So this is a 5th opinion. Let's go through it. First of all, my time, Rabbi Yossi, what's the sort of Rabbi Yossi? Why he says that every single day a person gets judged? Says the Gemara, why? He said a passage, but Tivka Daniel of Karim, David should remembers us, David should looks at us, monitors us every morning. And on Hachim, this is what I meant to say. But if he uses that passage in that very same passage, it also says it says exactly what Rabbi it says like Ramnasan said. My time, so why don't I follow Ramnasan? So it says the difference between Tivchanenu or Tivkedenu. Bechina is not even it's only a glance, just a look over. Pekida, as if to say in contrast to Pekida, which means to actually, like forensically look at it, see where you deserve it. So Pekida also just means to a cursory look. Elarach is a time of Rabbi Rabbi says a daily mahacha from here. The following pasuk. It says in the pasuk, last says Mishpat Abdai or Mishpat Amma Yisrael, that the Eibishter is going to the judge the Mishpat of his Eved and the Mishpat of the Jewish nation every single day. So therefore it's every day. We already had this before the Gemara. Chizah said, Melech v'tzibur, if it's the king who has to be judged, and the community, Melech, first come the king, the din to be judged. And then it says, Lasha Mishpat Abda. First he deals with the Mishpat of his servant, and then the Mishpat Am Yisrael goes afterwards. My time, why should the king be treated better? It's inappropriate. The king should wait online in queue with everybody else outside. If the Eibishter will hear so many different mishpatim, eventually we'll get angry and tired. We get angry. So better the king to be the first one when everything's still all right. Rabbi says, if so, what's when we daven today for somebody, for example, like somebody's very sick, and we daven today, who we davening for? Or the Amari, Talmid Chacham, who generally are weak from learning. The Torah weakens a person, so when we daven that they should get better. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very sick, and so many Tanaim and Amoraim were very sick, had intestinal problems. It's Keman Rabbi Yossi. It's only called Rabbi Yossi that holds every single day you get judged again. So pace it down. Sounds like from this Gemara, but according to, for example, a Meir Rabbi Yehuda, only get judged Shana. What's the point of davening? Somebody has a Shana is not well, or anything goes wrong during the year. Fafan. You got to wait till next year Rosh Hashana. It's all been predetermined, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what it sounds like in the Gemara. And we will come back to it in a minute. The Ibai saying, where's another answer? No, that even according to the Yehuda and Meir, you can make amends. How? Even the Rabbanan. So what's the point of davening throughout the year? That it benefits a person if he shouts and screams and he's in pain. Even after Gzeda, you can still overturn the Gzera if you do tshuva and so on and so forth. Now, cases and all the training are wondering. So it means according to the first answer of the Gemara, there's no point in davening. So what's Hashmanesa? In Shmanesa we say the Fe'enu, we say Birchas Hashani, Barchenu, all these brachas, Shmakelenu, according to them, the whole nusach doesn't make sense. And not only that, same Rabbi Yehuda here, who says that on Yom Kippur has been determined, says in Rosh Shabbos that if you go to a sick person, you should daven that the Hamokim Yerachim is a whole nusach tefillah. What's the point? So Rabbeinu Tam says an interesting thing. He says that what has been predetermined, according to the first answer, what has been predetermined that you will become sick, but has not been determined for how long, and that's up to us. So if Chas v'Shalom, anything that goes wrong, that was predetermined Rosh Hashanah. But we can't change the past. But once you find yourself in such a situation, then you could always change it because there's no time given. The Eibusher wants to see what our reaction will be. If we daven and we say tshuva, and say tehillim and everything else, things, the Eibusher now can modify how long it should be for. So that's where the davening comes in. Interesting concept. And then Tej gives another answer that if he calls it tefillah derabim. That's not clear if a tefillah derabim means dafke if you're davening with a million, and like we had the other Gemara that a davening a million, David should never despise it. And we're brachas. Is that what he means for rabbim? Or tefillah derabim means a nusach of davening, which is written for the rabbim. Then even the gzar din we can overturn. Okay, so let's continue Gemara. Studying more further. Tanya the Bryce. Why did Taylor say be oimer? But Pesach. Why did Taylor say you should bring the oimer? Dafka on Pesach. Pesach's man tfuhu. Pesach is the time, the season for grains. So therefore, says bring in oimer. Bring it now. Kadesh. It says I should mention. So the Ran says the Gemara is actually, reversing around. Why taka is this the Rosh Hashanah? As if the Gemara is saying, so why is this Rosh Hashanah Nisan for Tfuah? Because that's the season for growing, and therefore we bring the Omer in because that's the right season. To explain the Mishnah according to further on. Why to bring 2 loaves of bread and shmita to allow and that's when the Bikurim season starts, which is all the fruits. That's when the fruits now are ready to be picked. Bring me the 2 loaves of bread, but said this I should bench the fruits of the tree. The only thing is, why wheat? Why bread? Why don't we bring fruits? So Rashi brings here that he heard that this follows the view Rabbi Yehuda says elsewhere in Marsan Hedin that the tree, the Eitz Hadas that Adam Harishon ate was actually wheat. Even though we call it eitz, because we see the wheat is also called eitz, was actually wheat. And therefore, it's appropriate that the Shtei HaLechem should be the reminder to the Eibishter that he should give us blessing a good year. So it's interesting that Dafka, the Eitz Hadas, which caused the downfall of mankind, should be what was used every year Shavuos to bring out by the Eibishter Rachmanis, and that he should bless us with a good year, an abundant crop, or abundant supply of fruits and so on, which is quite interesting. Okay, says going further, and the other first pshat actually is because Bikurim, it says Bikur Chitin, even though Bikurim is also the Zayamin and all that, but it's also wheat, included wheat, and therefore we bring lechem. That's the most chashuv of all the things that we bring Bikurim from, so we bring Shtei HaLechem. Says going further, and then why do we say that you do Nisach HaMayim? Why do we have the water libations on Sukkot? Says, I know why. Kadesh is Baruch Lechem Gish Mishana. You should be blessed with rain because that's the rain season. The say before me a Malchus, the 3 brachas, which we say in Musaf of Rosh Hashana. Malchus, Zechrenis, and Shaifa is Malchus Kadesh Lechem. In order, you should coronate me to become your king. Zechrenis Kadesh Yala Zechrenechem for the I should remember you well. Uvameh, and how is all this done? Through Shaifa. So Amar Abba Babu said, Lama taken b'shayfer shalai. Why do you use a ram's horn? Truth matters, you don't necessarily have to use a ram's horn. You can use anything but a para, because we'll learn later, ain't ketegen asas negel. The para will remind Hashem of the egel. We don't remind of the egel. So interesting. When it comes to the egel, we don't want Hashem to remind of the egel. When it comes to Eitz Hadas, we have no problem reminding Hashem of the Eitz Hadas because we're using wheat as the bracha for the rain. It's as if the Eitz Hadas was part of the plan. Even though we had Avodah Zarah, Egel Azov is also part of the plan. Teach people how to do tshuva. So you have to work out what's the difference. Why Egel is Ketegen as a Sneger, but Eitz Hadas, we don't have that issue. Ketegen as a Sneger. Anyway, the Gemara continues. But anyway, why a ram? Use a shefer of a ram. Use the ram, the shefer of the ram. That will remind me of the Akedah. As if you yourselves were before me in Akedah. And this is what we spoke about on this week. Why it's a trivial part of the Akedah. We use that to remind the Eibishter of the Akedah. Anyway, says much further. We'll have a whole number of sayings now from Yitzchak. Lama taken Bereisha Shana. Now the Gemara here seems to be quite innocuous, and you'll see it's big machlek is a shaynim here in the Gemara. Very important halachas. Lama taken Bereisha Shana. He said, why do you blow shofar Shana? Ask the Gemara. Lama taken. Rachmanama tikkun the Teda. You can't ask why do we blow? The Teda said, and that's it. Ipso facto. Ela Lama Marian. Why do we do Trua? Again, the Gemara says, Marian. Rachmanama. The Teda says, Zichron Trua. No, my question is, Lama taking Marin Shiyoshiv. Why do we have Kiyaz and Yushiv right after Kriyas of Teda that Kiyaz are called Kiyaz of Yushiv? Because technically you can sit during those Kiyaz. And then we take Marin Kishayin, we do it again when they're standing. What was the point of that? Why have the same Kiyaz blown again? Says the Gemara Arviv Hasatan to confuse the Satan. And Rashi says very nice, like Siddish terms. Now when the Satan, the Abisha said, twice on Rosh Hashana true and once on Yom Kippur, and suddenly we blow 30 times, and we blow 60, we blow 100, and some blow 130. If the Satan sees that we went out of our way to increase the number of mitzvahs that we can do out of one little mitzvah, it's not even outright in the Torah, it's only a hint. We have to go to Tehillim, that his mouth clams up, he has nothing to say. How is he going to prosecute the Eden when they say, look, I mentioned true, and look what they're doing here in Shuls. That's what he says. The first case is another Shani mask. But isn't it Baal Tosef? If the Eibush told us, you're not allowed to add to a mitzvah, you're not allowed to add another day to Yom Tov and so on. How can we do this? So basically, Tosef is Mechadish. If you do the same, when is Baal Tosef if you add to the mitzvah? For example, a Kohen, you have to make 3 brachas, Yorecha, Yor, and Yisra. If he adds a 4th bracha, that's called Baal Tosef. If you add a 5th minyan tied into the lulav, that's Baal Tosef. If you add a 5th parsha into Tefillin. But if the Kohen goes to and repeats the whole Bichas Kohen, the same thing, so does it again. Or if you eat matzah, a kazais, eat 10 kazaisim, there's no Baal Tosef if you repeat the full mitzvah again. The same thing with the kiyas. You're doing the same kiyas again and again and again. The Rashba and others disagree, and the Rashba makes a big chiddush. He says there's no problem Baal Tosef. When is it Baal Tosef or Barsik? He says, what do you mean Baal Tosef? And why isn't it a problem when Rosh Hashanah falls on a Shabbos? We don't blow shofar. It's not Baal Tigora. The Torah says you're not allowed to diminish the mitzvahs. The pshat is on your own. You're not allowed to, on your own volition. But if the Chazal tell us that you should not blow shofar on Shabbos, or the Chazal tells we want you to blow it again to confuse the Satan, then it's not Baal Tosef because the Torah says listen to the Chachamim. So because this is La Yasa, you shouldn't deviate from the Chachamim or Alavicha. So therefore, there's no Baal Tosef at all. What do you mean confusing with Satan? I just told you. Rashi says. Others say it's because the Mashiach will come. It says you talk about shofar gadol. So the Satan is all confused. Is the Mashiach coming bringing him out of a job? So therefore, he is confused. The Machlekes Shayim is as follows. So which is the main kiyas and which is the kiyas to confuse the Satan? You would think that the main kiyas are the first ones you blow, and the second set is confuse the Satan. But the Gemara right before says that the main thing is to malchi as a chrein with shofars. We'll see in the end of the 4th Pedic that the main kiyas l'chayda seen from the Gemara is while you're saying musaf malchi as a chrein with shofars with the brachas. In fact, the Gemara has a whole discussion of brachas, ma'akvus, not ma'akvus. The main kiyas are by musaf. So we have basically 3 opinions. One opinion is the main key is the Miyushiv, and the key is the Muhammad by Shemrasa is purely to confuse us up. Many of the Shem hold the other way around. The main key is the Muhammad by Musa, because that's when you have Malchus and Shefis. And the first ones are to confuse us up. So some of the Shem asked, so where do you find that you do the main mitzvah later and the side reason you do first? And so here you have no choice. They say very interesting, very practical. If they would have made the extra kiss after, let's say after Musaf, so Musaf will be the main ones, and they'll make it after Musaf will blow all these extra kiss to confuse the Satan. Most people walk out of shul. They had enough of davening and they'd walk out, they wouldn't hear it. So in order to ensure that they hear the kiss, the extra kiss as well, brought it forward. Opinion number 3 is, in theory, the main key is the case of the Mu'ummad by Musa, because that's where you make Malchus and Shayfet. But once you blowed it before because of the reason, then technically you already ate some out. So we're not even doing it the best way possible, but that's how we do it to confuse the Satan. It's very similar to the taste of the Psachim Kuf Yudal about the Morah. If you ate Morah for Karpas, Even though the main mitzvah of Mur is after matzah, but if you did it by karpas, you already fulfilled the mitzvah of Mur. Okay, let's continue. Said, any year that is impoverished in the beginning, in other words, what do you mean? They behave, they're very bottled, they feel broken, and they dive into the Eibush properly, with cares and everything, and so on. Then the end will be, they will be blessed. How do we know that? It says Mereshis Hashana, Mereshis is down Aleph, then the Rosh means impoverished, but Ad Achiris, Soifish Achiris, and something to look forward to the end. You always something to look forward to that things will get better. We only judge the person the way he behaved then. It says, like we read in the Pasha recently, the angel told him Allah right now that he's small deserver. Now, don't tell me a story in 2,000 years. He does. He's a tzaddik. Let's be saved. Never understood that Gemara, this Gemara here, or Rashi there, because we just read that Sarah expelled Yishmael from the house because, as Rashi says, he was Oived Avodah Zarah. How can you call him a tzaddik? He was a tzaddik. What kind of tzaddik was he? He was a Rashi. He was very Oived Avodah Zarah, and Sarah had to expel him. Abraham said, "What should I do?" And Hashem said, "You should listen to Sarah, whatever Sarah says." So therefore, yeah, hard to understand. I don't know. If you have an answer, I'd love to hear it. Says the three things that you're sort of teasing the Eibush to judge you properly, and you might not come out so well with flying colors, so you should avoid it. What are they? If you're walking under a wall that's suspended, any minute it's fragile, it can collapse, and now you need the Eibush to do a nest to hold it up. The Eibush will look at you. Oh, do you deserve that I should go do Nisim, or let the wall collapse as it's meant to? Or the Iyun Tefillah, we'll learn that Iyun Tefillah means, and we'll see later that he anticipates that the davening that he did will actually be, he believes that definitely whatever I daven for is going to happen. So that's the Eibush says, oh, you think for sure? Let me see. And the third one is Ma'isa Din al Chaveda. If you say, oh, I'm not going to have to do it with you, the Eibush already will judge you and he'll punish you for what you deserve. Then the Eibush will say, oh, let's see what you're already administering punishments. Let me see what you deserve. Who naturally get punished first? From Sarah, we learn it says, Sarai el Avram. Sarai said to Avram, Chamosi alecha. I'm angry at you. I'm upset with you. I gave you a hugger, and so on and so forth. And then she gave birth straight away. And then she concludes, Yishpat Hashem beini uveinecha. Let Hashem judge between you and me. She's administering justice in the Eibish's name. The Eibush do it. So what happened then? Avram came to eulogize Sarah and to cry. In other words, who died first? Sarah died first. Sarah died before Hagar. In other words, the Eibush said, "So let me look at you and decide what you deserve." Sounds like from this Gemara here that Sarah died young because she did something wrong. Even though Rashi says right in the beginning of Rashi, "Kulan shavan l'teva bas kufka bas chaf l'chet." So what did she do wrong? What do you said? Don't know that either. Four things. Four things that if you do them, you can rent the decrees, even if they're evil against the person. If you give tzedakah, you can overturn, like we said, tzedakah from mothers will see. Tzaka, if you daven, and pain. Shinoi Hashem, changing your name. And someone's trying to say by changing your name, and you think about it for a minute, you say, oh, I'm a new person, have a new chance. Let me start a new life and start properly. And Shinui Maisa, and changing your activities. That was physically, so you do tshuva. So look at it, it's like from up. When things were in pain, distress, and we took them out of all those tight spots, all the tzoros. Shina, Shem Nechsiv, Sarah, Sarah, he will no longer be called Sarah, now you can have children. See what it says, later on it says, I will ben Shuvik, I'll give you a son. I'll give you a son. Shini Maisa, change of behavior. It says later on, David then had regrets for the bad that he designed for them when he saw how they behaved. And this he saw that people did shuvah. But else he didn't do it. If you move out of your place, it says, leave your country. Then it says in every respect. Why doesn't Avram bring the proof from here? I was not because he left his original place. It's the fact that he went to Yisrael, and Yisrael is full of brachas. Continue what Rabbi Yitzchak said. We already had this Gemara Sukkah. You have to be busy. You have to makabel your Rebbe and Yontif. Now it says Madu after Hayim. We just read the Haftarah that her husband should ask Shanamis, why are you going to Elisha today? Lo Chodesh v'lo Shabbos. The cloud of Chodesh Shabbos. You have to go to visit your Rebbe. And we discussed already at length then. What's the Rav? We're talking about Yom Tov. We bring it Rav for Chodesh and Shabbos. One of the Shem say Chodesh and Shabbos only for Sivchum and Yom Tov you should go even before. You know, you have to be Matthias of a Yom Tov. Shneimar says, "Uven v'losam le'sugo." It says in the pasuk, "Don't touch the nevela." Don't touch the nevela. And who's he talking to? He's talking to the Israeli. Melachayda Yisrael have a nisa becoming tummy. Only Kain has nisa. But we're talking about Yom Tov time. Tanya Mehachim. And also says, "Go Yochel Yisrael Mazon Al Magen Nevela." You didn't have a isa to touch the nevela. Tam But Emel Kain Bnei Adam is underneath. So Amazon only Kohanim have to be careful. Not Yidden. Madach Tumah Chamura. Kohanim Muzharin Zarin. Madach Tumah which is strict. Only Kohanim are warned and not Yisraeli. Is Kutumakala Koshki. The Matam was said in the last one to go, but that is a Yom Tov. The long shag is iron. There's big machlekes showing. Is this a din in is it because of the carbon? Therefore today it doesn't apply at all, or is it because of the Yom Tov, the kedusha of the regel itself? And then even today, in the Rabbanan, at least we have to, or something say Matayra, we have to go to the mikveh at the Yom Tov as well. Rav Kris said, and in Shulchan says you have to go today as well. Now, we're talking about Rosh Hashana is Yemadin. Comes along Rav Kris Bedoyi said, "Ne'Rav Yechanan Shloisha Sfarim Nivtachim B'Rosh Hashana." 3 books open on Rosh Hashana. Echad Shel Rishayim. 1 book is of Rishayim Gemurim. The Echad Shel Tzadikim Gemurim. 1 is of Tzadikim Gemurim, and the Echad Shel Beinim. 1 is for the average person. Beinim. Tzadikim Gemurim from the altar. Tzadikim Gemurim get recorded straight away and sealed l'chaim for good. Rishayim Gemurim from the altar l'misa. Showing straight away to misa. It's beinim tluyin v'oimdim b'Rishayim Kippurim. It's beinim that they have 10 more days to improve. Zochu nechtav l'chaim. Zochu nechtav l'misa. That's why it's very hard to understand. Avinu Malkeinu, we say Kasveinu, the Sefer, all the Parnos, like all of that. If you can't ask the Eibusha Kasveinu, you do tshuva. The Eibusha's hands are tied. Like it says right here, there are 3 books. It's up to us. If we do tshuva, he'll put us in this book. If we don't do tshuva, he'll put us in that book. So what are we davening when we say Kasveinu the Sefer? Before I already asked that. And the Rishonim already want to know, how come we see tzaddik in the famous questions that have a very difficult life, and we see the Rishonim have a grand life. And the Gemara says right here that it sounds like tzaddikim get right away l'chayim. So there are all kinds of explanations. But we'll have the Gemara Kedusha end the first Pedic that sometimes a tzaddik gets punished in this world for the one Aveda he did, so they can go straight to Gan Eden. And a Rasha will get rewarded in this world for the one mitzvah he did, so they can go straight to Gehenna. So when we say tzaddik and Rasha, the Rishonim say we mean for this mitzvah, not that he's overall a tzaddik over Rasha. In this, because they did one mitzvah, they decided to reward him in this world, go to Gehenna. So he's a tzaddik for this mitzvah, and the outcome therefore is a tzaddik. Not over. It's not a descriptive term of the person's general lifestyle. Rabbi said, "Micro, what's the pasuk? How do we know all this? I know that 3 different categories. It says the pasuk, Yimachu mesefer chayim. It says it'll be erased from the sefer of the living. With tzaddikim, they're not right with tzaddikim. We're going to dash in the 3 parts. We dash as follows: Yimachu mesefer, erase me from the sefer. The sefer shalashayim gemurim. That's the sefer. They get erased straight away. These are complete rishayim. Chayim, the book of life, the sefer shel tzaddikim. They get straight away recorded for life. The im tzaddikim, like I said, you cannot join me with tzaddikim. The sefer shel beinim. That's the sefer for the beinim. For those who are average. From here, it says the pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Average to be ma'ayin." And if you're not ma'achol eden, mocheni nam sefercho asher kasafta. Erase me from the sefer that you wrote. So Ladashin, it covers the 3 svarim. Mocheni no erase me is a sefer shel Hashem. That's a sefer where everybody gets erased in this world. Sefercho, your book, that's this very special one. The sefer shel tzaddikim. Asher kasafta that you wrote, which are a bit more distant. The sefer shel beinim, but you're still writing. That's a sefer shel beinim because we have to Yom Kippur. Tanya, we have an argument from Vishama Vasil. Vishama says, Gimel Kittas Hein L'Yom Hadin. He says that L'Asid Lovei, besides the judgment that we have on Rosh Hashana when Mashiach will come, by Tchias Mason there'll be a judgment again. If you get it describes that the judgment day, the Yom Hadin, Mashiach will come, will be far harsher than the judgment day of Rosh Hashana. and there'll be three groups of people. Achashal tzaddikim gemurim, there'll be complete tzaddikim, which are majority mitzvahs, even though we call them gemurim here. So Rashi says, "Achashal destroying gemurim, majority abaydas, and achashal beinim half and half." Tzaddikim gemurim nechsavim nechamalte, they get written and sealed straight away. L'chai olam, they will come, they'll have tchiz basic. Haba. Rishayin gemurim nechsavim nechamalte, they go straight. Legehenim, Shneim it says. The Rabbi Misheni Ad Masafa Yikitzu, many of those who was lying in the ground will come back. These will go to the L'chaya Elam, to the Elam Haba. The Elam, the following L'cherpes will be embarrassed L'droin Elam to the abyss, and therefore those are the shame. And Beinanim, and those who do half and half, Yordin Legehenim, they will go to Gehenim. They will daven to the Eibishter, and then immediately the oil will go out of Gehenim. It says, I will take the third, will tie shlishis, the third group. I'll take the third group, I'll put them through fire, which is Gehenim, and I will cleanse them, and I'll purge all the extraneous materials from them. The same thing is I'll refine them like we refine gold. So, they will then daven to me, and I will respond to them, I'll take them out. And regarding this third group, Chana said, Hashem he puts them to death and gives them life. He takes them, he drops them to Gehenim, and then he takes them back out. That's Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel is far more lenient. Beis Hillel says no. That Yom Hadin Mashiach will come will be different than Rosh Hashana, where the Eibush judges it properly, but it'll be much more lenient. The Rav Chesed, it says in Pasuk that the Rav Chesed in the 30 minutes of Ahmed says the Rav Chesed was mate klape Chesed. He will tilt it towards the Hashem's generosity. That since you did half mitzvahs and half avedis, the Eibush will tilt the scale towards the mitzvahs, and they won't even go into Gehenim anymore. David said about them, I love them, ki yishma Hashem as koili, Hashem heard my voice, and not that I had to go to Gehenna and then come back out again. But then David Melech said that whole parsha, Hatish Hashem, which you say in Howell, I was poor and impoverished, but he lifted me from there. Those people who sinned with their goof, which we'll see later what that refers to, and and so to the Shoyim amongst the Goyim, the Gufan, they're Yordin Legehenim, V'nidoinin B'yu B'chodesh. They're going to Gehenim, they'll be there for 12 months. So in other words, that's why we say Kaddish only 11 months, because only a complete Shoyim remain in Gehenim for 12 months, and we don't want to cast aspersions that we believe that whoever we're saying Kaddish after is a complete Rosh Hashana. And La'acha Yud Beis Chodesh, what happens after 12 months? Gufan Kala, their bodies disintegrate, V'nishmasan Nisrefet, their soul gets destroyed, burnt, V'ruach Mefas Rasan, and the wind scatters them. These are obviously all Meruchazik allegories. Tachas Kappas Ragla Tzadikim, they become like dust under the legs, feet of Tzadikim. Shneimar says, V'asa Seichem Rishayim, he will step on, he will trample on the Rishayim, Ki Yiu Eifet Tachas Kappas, there will be ashes before underneath your feet. Avobot Haminim, those complete the Shana do Avedis, so they stay in Gehenna much longer. But Haminin, those who are Minin Apokadis, and Rashi says, for example, Tzdukim by Susim, other places he says people who follow Yoshka, the Hamisaidis, somebody's a Moser, and Rashi says a Moser, somebody who gives over money, reports to the government about a Yid who owes money, whatever it is, so the government comes and takes the money. That's a Moser. A Moser has zero hope of ever getting out of Gehenna, and people should learn a lesson from that. The Apikursim, and Apokadis. Rashi, interesting, learns an Apokadis because there's a different. We had a machlekes, or have a machlekes on Hedron in the last page. What Apokadis is. Rashi takes an Apokadis, somebody who insults a Talmid Chacham, humiliates Talmid Chachamim. Other times we say Apokadis is somebody who doesn't believe the Torah of Shemayim, doesn't believe that every word of the Torah is actually from the Eibishter, or that things haven't changed, or shekafru b'Torah, deny the Torah at all. As Rashi says here, they don't believe Torah is divine. They don't believe in Tchias HaMesim. Rashi says that Pirshu Darkei Tzibur is really the category here, and all of these are examples of Pirshu Darkei Tzibur. Other than Pirshu Darkei Tzibur, no, is another example, which is in no Avedis, but never joins the community in anything. There's a good cause, tzedakah, they don't join in. They don't join the community in anything. They don't feel that they're disenfranchised, they're marginalized on their own, and they have nothing to do with the community. That's partially Pish Darkei Tzibur, and that's a terrible thing. Look, he bunched them together with Apokadis and the minion and the muscle and everything else. Those who instill fear in the land of the living, and we'll see later what that means. We'll see tomorrow. They sinned and they caused others to didn't let anybody go to Shlaim. Is they'll go to Gehenna, they'll never come out. It says the you'll go out and see the corpses of all those people who sinned against me. In fact, they will outlast the Gehenna. Eventually, Gehenna will shut down when Shia comes. But their punishment will never stop. It says the tzuram and their form levalo sha'ol. They will outlive the sha'ol, outlive the Gehenna. Why? Mizvulai. What's Mizvulai? They kolkach lamed. They should push the yedei mizvul because they stretched out their hand against the vul, against the base of Midrash. Now it says Mizvulai. The ein zvul el base of Midrash. Vul base of Midrash. Now it says Moshe Shlomo says Bona banisi beis vul. I built you a base vul. And Valem Chana says Hashem yachtum ribav. Hashem will cut down those who oppose him. One more line. But their faces, their faces are like the bottom of a pot that's all black. We're talking about these Rishonim who never come up, they're black, or we're talking about actually the Beinim. The fact that they went to Gehenna for a very short time, their faces are still black and still feel the effects of it. And Amar Rav says, this is a description of Shpidi Shepidi Bnei Chuzah, that these are the best of the best people of Bnei Chuzah. We call them the Bnei Gehenna because even the best of the best are Bnei Gehenna. Okay, we'll start.